Hi guys, it's Tweedledee here. I'd like to welcome you to part 6 of the Complete Beginner's Guide to League of Legends. This episode is called I'm in lane, now what the hell do I do? So to start things off, I basically want to explain that this is more or less a general concept and it can vary slightly. Also, while the information I'm going to provide to you right now is more or less the general concept of what people think in LoL as a whole, I'm going to give you my take on it, and this is from my experience as well, so it will mirror very likely to what people say. But just bear in mind, it might vary slightly from what you've heard or been told before. With that being said, let's move on and get started with the actual content of this video. So each game is basically broken down into 3 phases. You've got the laning phase, which is part 1, you've got the mid game, which is part 2, and you've got the late game, which is part 3. So quite clearly we're going to start on number 1, the laning phase. So basically you spawn. You're going to purchase your items. Make sure to buy an item that's relevant to your champion. Hopefully you'll have it in your item set that I've showed in an earlier video. Don't forget to buy your trinket, the one that's appropriate to you. 99% of the time it's going to be the yellow trinket you're going to purchase. From there you're going to leave the Nexus and you're either going to help the jungler at the buff he starts. So if he starts blue buff and you're at top lane, you help him with blue buff. If he starts red buff, he gets a bit of help at red buff. If he's not at your buff, he's at the opposite buff, what you want to do is cover the one that he's not at. So let's just say your jungler starts at blue buff. Well then, if you're bot lane, you would want to go and cover his red, just in case the enemy invades it, and then follow your minions on up to the lane. Likewise, if you're top lane and your jungler starts at the red buff, you should cover his blue buff, and then once your minions start to push up, you want to walk up the lane with your minions. So now we're going to assume you're in your lane, the enemy champion has arrived in the lane as well. Now you never ever hit your minions, ever. Do not ever hit your minions unless you want to push your lane. And by that I mean, when you're hitting your minions, you're killing their minions quicker than they would naturally die, and you're going to end up pushing your lane. Your minion wave will push further closer towards their tower. So last hit only. When the minion is about to die, that's when you hit it just in time to get the gold only. Don't just sit there auto attack after auto attack after auto attack on the minions, because before long you're going to be pushed up straight to their turret, you're going to get ganked, you're going to die. Now if you actually want to push your lane, work away, but it's not the most efficient way of playing the game, that's guaranteed. At this stage of the game, regardless of what lane you're in, the most important thing to do is farm. You need to farm minions, you need that gold, you need that experience. Don't pointlessly trade constantly with the enemy. It's a mistake you see quite often where people get into lane and they lose so much creep score just by trying to trade constantly and trying to kill the enemy constantly, and they lose out on so many minions. That's a big mistake. Concentrate on last hits, concentrate on getting your gold, concentrate on getting your XP, and you can harass the enemy if you want, that's fine, but only if possible, and not at the expense of your health points, your creep score, or your mana. I'm not going to go into a detailed explanation in this video as to what harassing is or how to do it, but instead I'm going to give you a very short overview of what it is. So harassment is when you want to disrupt or hurt the enemy. It's not where you want to kill them. Wanting to kill them is something completely different, which usually comes from a good harass. So if you get a good engage on harass, going all in for the kill is common. So what I mean by that is, you're harassing them down, you're poking them down, you're poking them down, and if you've got that harass off all pulled together really well, they'll now be low on health or mana from spamming you back, and now is the time to engage after all that harassment in the lane, and now going for the kill is likely to achieve a positive result. As I've said though, you don't want to sacrifice your creep score, you don't want to sacrifice your health or your mana in order to harass. So that's pretty much the depth. I'm going to get into harass at this moment. So it's still laning phase of the game anyway, you're starting to level up on that. Do not forget to constantly put your trinket down. There's no point in having a trinket in your inventory and not on the map. It's just wasted time that it's not giving you vision, and when it's already run out of time it needs to cool down, so you're wasting time by not having it down. Also keep an eye out for incoming ganks, be it friendly ganks or be it enemy ganks. So just quickly to explain what ganking is. Ganking is the term used when a group of champions ambush enemy champions. They usually occur when the champion that's in the lane allows the enemy champion to push up towards their turret. They're pushing their minions, they're farming hard, they're getting close to the turret they mightn't have warded, and that's when you've got the highest possibility of a kill from a gank. So as you can see in that clip, Zed had slightly overextended in mid lane, Fiddlesticks came in around from the back, ulted over at him, had to flash, hit him with a Q which feared him, and then that was the end of that. The fish came and killed it. Perfect gank. So to move on from that, I just want to say in general, to recall it you need to replenish your health point, your mana, also don't forget to buy your items. I mean, I can't explain the exact fighting dynamics of the laning phase in detail, that's just something you're going to have to learn. But I mean, fight and trade when you have the advantage. For instance, if you're slightly ahead in terms of level, or if you've got more powerful burst than the enemy that you're facing, or if their spells are on cooldowns, if they're low on health points, or perhaps if they have no mana, don't fight or trade when you have the disadvantage, where you have no mana, you have low health point. It's common sense really, but it sometimes goes out the window when you're in lane 1v1 the champ and you just forget yourself for a few seconds. Okay, so now that we've learned a bit about laning phase, it would be nice to know how to understand when laning phase has ended. So it's generally considered that laning phase is over once the outer turrets on both teams have been destroyed. The reason for this is it becomes so dangerous if you've destroyed the enemy turret on the outside in your lane to push further past that point without being killed. So after laning phase you have the mid game. Mid game, this is when you start to see groups of teammates together. Let's just say 3 to 5 as a nice number. I mean, there'll be lots of team fights and the groups will likely roam around the map either together or not far apart. So you might have a group that's pretty close together. Two might be in mid lane and one might be taking, say, the rates just at mid lane, but they are pretty much 3 together. You should never kind of just frolic through the jungle or any kind of uncontrolled territory on the map alone at this point, and even in a group you need to be extremely careful. You shouldn't venture out into the unknown to ward even by yourself. You're asking to get caught, and 9 times out of 10 you will get caught and killed doing that. Also, what you'll notice during the mid game is that a lot of skirmishes will break out around, say, Baron buff or the Dragon. Ideally, you should never really go near Baron without 5 teammates, either to capture it or to defend it. And the Dragon is pretty similar. You definitely shouldn't be there alone anyway, that's for sure. And if the enemy is going to take it, you shouldn't just go in by yourself. You always want to have, ideally, a full team to try and counter them taking Dragon. So the last thing I want to mention about the mid game is to not neglect your lane. Don't forget to keep your lane from being pushed and your turret from being destroyed any further. So hopefully you're beginning to understand the mid game of LoL a little bit better. So I just want to go through some bullet points just to recap what the mid game is. So there's groups of teammates in 3 to 5s. They will roam around a lot. They'll either be together or they'll be very close by to each other. There will be many team fights and skirmishes, especially over the likes of Dragon or Baron. Don't wander alone in uncontrolled parts of the map, especially where there's no vision. Do not venture out into the jungle to ward alone, and be sure not to neglect your lane. So hopefully you've survived mid-game quite well and you've picked up quite a few kills and assists. So with that being said, let's move on to the last part, which is late game. So as you can see by the picture here, late game starts more or less around 30 minutes in. Give or take, it could be a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but it's more or less around the 30-minute mark. No one should travel alone at this point. You should always be in as many people as you can. Gameplay is going to vary from being pushes, to team fights, to defending pushes, to taking objectives. So what I mean by pushes is you're going to be like 5 your teams and you're going to try and push down a turret, or you're going to try and push down an inhibitor, or you're going to end up having a team fight out in the lane, or you're going to have to defend your own turret or defend your own inhibitor as a team, or you're going to have to defend or take Baron or Drake as a team. Moving on, the entire team must be together in order to dispute objectives such as Baron and Drake at this stage in the game. When you're clearing a lane, don't linger at it, don't push it, just clear the wave and then get back to your team. So when you see that your top lane is being pushed by the minion wave, go up there, clear the enemy minions, maybe a wave, maybe 2 waves, and then get back to your team as quick as you can, as safely as you can. The last point to highlight on this is the longer a game is, the easier it is to throw, which basically means lose that game. It doesn't matter who won the laning phase or who won the mid game, as the game goes on it gets longer and longer and longer. It means the cooldowns on the death timer are getting much higher, and the damage output from each champion is getting much higher too, and the tanks are getting tankier. So what happens then is one team fight can basically end the game. and that could be the team that's been behind the entire game. So good game if you're on that team that struggled all game, but QQ for you if you were on the team that just threw after dominating the entire game. Backdoor is a bit more advanced, but this is when a strong or fed champion attacks a turret or inhibitor by themselves, while the rest of his team is harassing the enemy team. That's a little bit more of an advanced tactic and it relies on several factors, so I'm just including it here for the sake of mentioning it, but I'm not recommending that you do it. So that concludes part 6 of our complete beginner's guide to League of Legends. I hope you now understand a little bit better what you should be doing during each phase of the game. As always, thank you very much for watching this video. If you like what you've seen or have helped you in any way, don't be shy to subscribe or like. All the best now, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.